To me, like being open-hearted is not like just being nice. I mean, to me, being open-hearted is being receptive. It's being honest with ourselves. It's being honest with others, and having the courage to be both receptive and also to share, to share our truth, to share our insights, to share our wisdom, to share our fears. So to me, living with love is having an open heart and having the courage to both give and receive. And I think both of those things can be edgy for us as human beings.
What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now, let's get cozy and start today's episode. If you're looking for inspiring and practical ways to deepen your leadership, then this episode of the Lead with Love podcast is for you. In today's conversation, I get cozy with my dear friend and women's leadership coach, Nisha Moodley, where we talk about open-hearted leadership, boundaries, motherhood and business, and channeling our anger for the greater good. Nisha is also the founder of Global Sisterhood Day and the creator of Soul of Leadership, where you embrace and embody the 12 soul qualities of leadership. Her work is driven by a belief in the immense power of sisterhood to help us expand our individual and collective freedom. And if you ever have a chance to be in a circle or retreat or mastermind with Nisha, you will feel so connected to other women in a way that you have never felt before. She is truly powerful at the space and the community that she creates. Nisha also works with women who feel a deep calling to offer their hearts and their hands in service to humanity. And through their work together, her aim is to support them in embracing their innate brilliance, expanding their freedom, embodying their leadership, and aligning their actions with their inner truth. Yes, please. Her work also blends years of interest and study in spirituality, holistic health, coaching, and family systems. I also love that Nisha does a lot of work behind the scenes around restorative justice and advocacy. She's been a coach for 10 years, leading mastermind groups, online courses, and she's done over 30 retreats around the world. So let's get cozy with Nisha. Hi, Nisha.
Hi, Jada.
I feel like this is a very long-awaited conversation. My team has been reaching out of like, Nisha, and it's so funny because we text Vox almost on the daily, but to like have an official interview conversation for the podcast is a lot harder because we're both mamas, we're both business owners, and we're navigating and juggling a lot.
Totally. And having so many conversations that we're just talking all the time anyway. We just don't record them.
Yes. So this is an opportunity for people to be a fly on the wall to one of our conversations. And I always want to come back to that place of where we first met. I can't remember like where, when I officially found you. It might have been through the Sarah Jenks like rabbit hole, like it went Marie Forleo, Sarah Jenks, Nisha. And I remember I checked my Pinterest board today, but I have this board called 5-Year Plan Plus Dreams. And there's an image of your website header, and my caption on my Pinterest says, join Nisha's mastermind group, have her as my business plus lifestyle coach.
Oh my gosh. Love that.
And I remember, when I applied for your mastermind and I wasn't able to make that investment at that time. But I remember having a phone call conversation with you talking like, hey, I'm happy to share Instagram strategies with you. And you offered to share how you coach and lead within your mastermind program. And you were just so generous and so transparent. And I feel like that is you through and through, even to this day, that we've been able to be in masterminds together, peer-based, text-based, local, in-person. And I don't know if you remember kind of where we first connected, but that's the story I have in my head.
I remember that conversation. I was in Miami at the time with our mutual friend Kavita, I think on a vacation. And I remember having that conversation with you because I remember looking for a good spot around the pool that wasn't too noisy.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think I was like walking through the grocery store, like, here are the Instagram strategies that I have for you. So before we dive in, I always want to ask, what does leading with love mean to you? And how do you put love into practice in your business?
I love this question. So one of my favorite words is the word courage. One of the roots of the word courage is the word cœur, which is heart. And like, to me, the word courage is that we lead with love. Like, we are moving forward from the heart, led by, driven by, fueled by love. And so to me, leading with love means having the courage to be open-hearted and to be true. To me, like, being open-hearted is not like just being nice. I mean, to me, being open-hearted is being receptive. It's being honest with ourselves. It's being honest with others, and having the courage to be both receptive and also to share, to share our truth, to share our insights, to share our wisdom, to share our fears. So to me, leading with love is having an open heart and having the courage to both give and receive. And I think both of those things can be edgy for us as human beings.
Can you give me an example of how you lead with love from a place of courage and heart? And I love that, where you're saying not necessarily being nice. Can you give me an example of how you would apply that, or how you've done that within your business?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's even in the structuring of my business, noticing that there's like a flame burning in my heart to consider something or to do something different, or, so an example of that is that when I created my course, Soul of Leadership, I was really thinking about, what does it mean to be truly inclusive, to be equitable? Like, I might think that this price, whatever the price is super accessible, but it probably isn't accessible. It's definitely not accessible for everybody on the planet, right? And it's probably super no-brainer, like wildly affordable for a lot of people, like most people. But really, I could, like, this question was like on my heart, like it stayed with me. And even though I kind of rationalized lots of different things about it being inclusive and equitable, the question stayed with me. And so allowing myself to sit in that question and sit in the unresolved the truth of it, the fact that it felt unresolved for me, which then led me to a place of saying, okay, I'm going to create a scholarship for this. Like, even though it's a super affordable program, I'm going to create a scholarship that feels really good. And that's an outcome that I could have done from guilt or from a sense of like duty, like right and wrong. This is like a responsibility that I have, or I could have not done it. And I'm not saying that it would be wrong to not offer one, but for me, right, because this like kept burning inside of me, this call to go deeper in my inquiry and to really listen to what felt right and true for me. Again, not making it better than anyone else or the right path, is just the right path for me to make that choice. And I got to make it from a joyful place. Yeah. Instead of from a place of like, ooh, I have to do this or else people are going to think, or else I'm going to, right. That's what you're supposed to do. Right. So that's just one example. And I think there are others too, like really hearing people out. I think this is a really interesting time to be a human being with a Facebook account or an Instagram account, like a human being who's not just existing in the world, but also in the interwebs. There's a lot of passion and emotion and, righteous anger and calling in and calling out like this. It's just a lot of intensity right now. And we're seeing it like all the way up in the political down to like the interpersonal between people. And that it can be really hard to navigate that. And so I think another place this has shown up for me is the ability to, I shouldn't say the ability, it's more of a practice, right? Like the practice of coming back and checking in with my heart and noticing, okay, I might feel, like reactionary to what somebody is saying, or I might feel defensive, or I might feel blamed or accused or judged, or I might feel like I'm right and someone else is wrong. And right, I can have all of those feelings, but if I can just deepen down below the reaction, below the impulse to really listen to the deeper truth inside of that, then I can be more receptive. I can be more discerning about what feels true for me, what doesn't feel true for me, right? A little more separation of the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And to me, those are all like sourced from leading with love, from being rooted in my heart and receptive and also willing to show up and give.
Is there a specific post online where you did show up from a place of being reactionary or defensive or feeling like you were being blamed?
Oh, nothing that specific that comes to mind. Oh, that's not true. It was like everything. I got the everything response, right? So actually, when my son was very little, he was only a couple months old, I did this like, it was like if anyone's done a post and you thought all of, 30 seconds about it, right? It wasn't like this well thought out, saved the draft, went back and edited it kind of post. It was like, click, click, click with my left hand, probably while I'm nursing on the other side, and then send, right? And what happened, so is this one post, and it's really not even about like what the core of my work is, right? It was just, I was just sharing a little snippet of my life. And I said something to the effect of the fact that since he was really little, me and his dad would ask him before we would pick him up, even though he couldn't respond. He was only like 3 or 4 months old, but we would just say, hey, can I pick you up? And we were doing this to teach him about consent and to, over time, nurture the recognition that it's his body and that other people have their bodies and he's allowed to say no and so are other people. I didn't even go into that much detail. I just said that we ask him before we pick him up, and I kind of gave a little overview as to why. So what happened was I got a call within 24 hours, I think, from a reporter from Yahoo who said, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this. And I was like, okay. So we got on the phone and we spent 10 minutes and, like a lot of articles these days, they can be kind of clickbaity. And I'm not saying anything bad about this journalist, right? It was whatever would get eyeballs, right? That's how a lot of these posts work these days. And that's fine. But it ended up getting a lot more eyeballs than I imagined. And so everything from like a repost on Ashton Kutcher's blog and Facebook page and Instagram and so forth to, I had a friend call me and say, I just heard Sean Hannity say your name. And it was really interesting because when I first saw the article go up, I was like, oh, okay, there it is. And then I saw that there were thousands of comments, like within 24 hours, thousands. And I didn't know that I maybe shouldn't look at them because there was no point. And I did. And, there were a couple that were like, this is so sweet. This is what we do with my kid too. Or, oh, I love, there's a parenting technique called, ABC, and we really believe in that. And so there was a lot of like, yay, go mom. And then there was a lot of other stuff, let's just say. And it ranged everything from, the snarky, silly, like, that kid's going to pull her nose ring right out kind of stuff to like super vitriolic, hateful. And it became a full-time job for a week or so, like blocking and deleting and and sifting through and seeing a lot of this and learning how to work with all of that, how to bring in people for support or people who are already on my team to say, I can't look at this. You filter it for me. It's a little too close to home for me. It's about me and my child. And also really learning this valuable skill that I'm so grateful. I mean, if I could have learned it an easier way, that would be nice, but it happened the way it happened. And it was a really powerful trial by fire for me, which is I think about how with email, for example, I don't sit really, and probably neither do you, Jada, like agonizing over every email. Like, what do I do with this? Do I archive it? Right? Where at this point, most of us are pretty adept. And so we can go, oh, this is trash. I'll archive this. Oh, I need to flag this and reply later. Oh, okay. This one needs a little bit more in depth. Oh, I can reply to this one right now. And so we can we're pretty agile in our responsiveness with email. But I think about like if my grandmother were on email, it might be a little more like, I got an email from a Nigerian prince who needs help. Like, not necessarily because she's gullible or something, but it's just she hasn't learned that language of how to work with these inputs in this format, right? And so I got the experience of learning how to work with all of those inputs and how to separate, okay, this is complimentary or kind, super easy to take in, great. This is like really hateful and, abusive, actually, even, not just mean or a little snarky, but this is abusive. Okay, that gets dealt with. But then there's all this stuff in the middle and learning how to sit with, oh, I hear what that person is saying. Even though we're disagreeing, let me take that in. How do I want to, be with that? Like allowing things in, but learning what to allow in, how much to allow it in, and what to separate out. And I think that often these days, it's like, if it's friendly and nice, great. And if it's anything other than that, we want to immediately discount it and push it away. But sometimes there can be some really beautiful learning, but we do have to, I feel, for our own well-being, and also just for the sake of our energy and time, learn how to distinguish and discern between what is abusive, or truly vitriolic and really not worth our energy and time, and what might be wrapped in a hard to take package, but has some substance, some goodness in it.
One thing that I saw that you posted recently, you said, you do not have a responsibility to share your personal life or experiences with the world, even if you think it would serve. Privacy is your right and your choice, and healing and safety look different to each of us. And I know that for you, you do share many of your personal stories and insights online, on Instagram. You have over 20,000 followers and you choose to share. And so one, I just love that you took a stand that not everyone has to do it the way that you're doing it, like giving people permission to find their way. Because for me, my fascinate advantage is the intrigue, which is mystique and passion. And so I actually don't share a lot of my personal life online, even though I'm like, oh, I know it would help deepen connection and trust. And so I'm curious, especially how you were saying that you did share a personal story, approach, philosophy, and how you raise your child. What's your approach to sharing those personal stories online, and have you created boundaries to put in place around that now?
Yeah. I love this question. I wrote that in response to two things. One, right before I shared that post that you just read, thank you. I had shared something very deeply personal about my life. And, sort of like what we've seen with the Me Too movement, where one person will share and then more people are sharing. And then all of a sudden we have a sort of upswell of people sharing their stories. What I saw at the time that I shared this story, and also around things like Me Too, is people also saying, we need to tell our stories. We need to share our stories. It's important for us. If you have a story to tell, you need to tell it. And I actually have a different perspective, which is, if it feels nourishing and healing and like a desire for us to share, then we get to share. we get to share, but we don't ever have to share. I don't owe the internet my life story. I don't owe it to anyone actually, except myself. Like I owe myself to face myself and my life. I owe that to myself, but I don't owe it to anyone else. And so I think there can be this pressure also to, like, we have a responsibility to tell our stories. We have a responsibility. And I think we actually need to take that weight away from it and recognize it's not always time to share. So for me, the way that I discern what and when and how to share, one is if I'm in a place around something. So like, for example, when I went through a divorce, right? In the beginning, it was so tender. And even when I entered into a new relationship, also felt very tender, right? So I'm not saying it's necessarily like something difficult. It can also be something really beautiful or an idea that you have, right? Like that you're really excited about. But when I'm in the place of something feeling very tender to me, and like I maybe even am having a hard time fully holding it for myself or holding myself in it, which when I say that, I don't mean like I don't need anyone, but what I mean is more like I can breathe through this experience. Like I've got me, and I am probably also leaning on the people that are close to me, but also I can hold myself in this. If I'm not in that place, I will not share. Because I know what's likely to happen is that inability to hold space for myself is going to translate as I need you to hold space for me. And I neither want nor like grant my trust and faith in the internet holding me. It's not just my friends. I trust my friends. But this is like the wide open worldwide. It's called the World Wide Web for a reason. And I don't know all those people. So for me, it's like if I'm going through something really tender and it's tender for me to hold, it's a new idea. It's a challenge that I'm having that's super tender for me to hold. I'm having a hard time holding it. That for me personally is not my time to share it on the internet, or at least not time to share the full thing.
Yeah.
What I will probably get back is a lot of people maybe wanting to, very sweet, like very well-intentioned, right? And I don't have anything wrong with this, but people maybe wanting to comfort me or offer me advice. And I think that's probably, by and large coming from a really sweet, kind, great place. And what I really need is that kind of support from my inner circle. So I just discern for myself, like, is this super tender to hold? Am I struggling to hold this, or am I feeling tender around this? Oh, then I need to lean back on my close friends or family, like the people closest to me, not out into the internet. So that's one piece. And I think another piece for me, and again, this is just for me, I don't have this as right or wrong for anyone else, but really like checking in with, is this my story to tell? Who else's story is this? And how do I feel about including them in this share? And I don't necessarily have a rule about that. It's just that I really check in with myself about what feels true. And sometimes it's just that I'm not ready to share something about, this with another person, even though I might feel really solid. I'm like, okay, well, that's not fully, it doesn't feel quite great in my own body and my own system to like share that about them, or our shared experience even. So again, I don't have a rule about it, but it's really just checking in with my body. And if there's a part of me that feels like, ooh, I don't know, I wait. And sometimes I check in, I asked my ex-husband recently, like, hey, can I tell this story? And he was like, I don't really feel comfortable with that. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I asked. Yeah. And I actually found, and so it's great. Yeah. For me, that works really well, just doing that inner discernment. And there's one more piece, and I think it's really valuable. Like, I think it's really important, which is I do a very thorough, as much as I remember to, sometimes I forget, but I try to remember to really check in on my intentions and see what my intentions are in sharing something, whatever it is. I mean, anything, but really just check in, like, what am I wanting to get out of this? Or what am I wanting to achieve out of this? And sometimes I'll find like, it's like like 3 green lights, like, go, you're great. And sometimes it's like 2 green lights and a red light, and the red light is like, I really want to be seen this way, or I really want to prove something, or I want validation in this way. And that is when I just have to lean back and come into myself and really check in. Oh, okay. There's a little part of me that wants to seek approval and validation. That is not what I go to the internet for. I go inward and I go to my closest friends if I cannot hold that within myself, right? That's what I take to those nearest and dearest to me and inside of myself. And so it's not that I'm bad for wanting approval, validation, any of that kind of stuff, to be seen or liked or perceived a certain way. But I just want to check that. Like, I want to do the internal checks and balances so that, again, I'm not outsourcing my own sense of like value and self-worth to the internet. I want to be doing that for me.
Yeah. And what I hear is like just taking this extra pause to check in with yourself, to check in with others, and to like see if there's any lights going off, to just taking that extra moment of pause to have that space for discernment. And I know even for me, after I have like a therapy session or a session with my life coach, I'm like, ooh, as a teacher, as a coach, like I want to like share it with other people, but I have to remember of like, this is for me first. Even with writing my book, it's like, this is for me first. Like I need to heal me first before repurposing what I've just learned, this new insight that I'm like, everyone else needs to know. So it's just having that pause for the discernment. And I appreciate your approach to that, of really checking in with your body, checking in with others that might be a part of that story before just going out and sharing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I feel like in these times where I think it's so easy for any and all of us to get really swept up into likes and followers and comments and, having that be a source of like approval and validation, for us to really check in, like do a nice, deep, thorough check in on that so that we don't get lost. Like we don't lose ourselves on the internet.
Yeah. And one thing that I've also noticed you do is taking a really strong stand to use your online platform for justice and advocacy. And I am just curious if there was a specific moment where you made a conscious decision to use your voice, use your platform in this way. I know that everything that you do is with such intention and deep care. And so I'm just so curious about this pathway for you.
Well, for starters, when I originally started coaching, I got into it by way of like a very deep passion in environmental sustainability and health, like human health as an extension, or holistic health as an extension of environmental sustainability and basically global sustainability. I was really passionate about that. And years ago, when I lived in Vancouver, Canada, I was like, making art pieces out of like my photography of garbage and, just like really so passionate about that. And I got into and I studied health and nutrition so that I could get into holistic health. And it was fueled by that passion. And then I really, I got to live that, which was so powerful, but also really learned a lot about business. And all of this learning about business and then running a business and the logistics and challenges and, all of the moving parts of running a business really started to take over this, sort of like activist aspect of myself. And I felt like I didn't even really know what was going on in the world anymore. I started feeling really disconnected from a like deep sense of passion and fire. And so I think part of it was just feeling that longing, like I missed a part of myself. I was like, where is she? I miss her. In the same way that I was really for a while missing my poet self. Like I stopped writing poetry and I was like, where did she go? I miss that one. So part of it was just starting to, recognizing that there was a part of me that I was missing and starting to just nurture that more. Like, I'm going to start making art. I'm going to start making time to write poetry. I'm going to start reading the news more and understanding what's going on more and becoming more active and engaged. And so just knowing more and being more engaged. And then the universe conspired for me to give birth to my son right in between the 2016 US election and inauguration. Right in between. So I was pregnant through the election cycle, which for anybody probably in the world, because I think the world was watching in many ways, but certainly in the United States, it was a very intense time. There was a lot of intensity and a lot of emotion. And so I was really, I was so open, like energetically, hormonally, my hormones were all over the place. And I really got in touch with my anger in a major way and had to learn how to like be with that, because for so long, I did not feel angry. I felt sad. I felt devastated and, heartbroken by things, but angry, not really. And so I think also just getting in touch with my anger. And that anger, as I learned to work with it more, I just felt this energy underneath anger. It was fueled by love, like what I care about, what matters to me and what I'm passionate about. And, anger is a fiery energy. And so I was like, oh, I can channel this fire by speaking about what matters to me, what I'm passionate about, what I care about. And it just so happened that I had lots of fodder during that election cycle. And so there was more, like just more of that came out of me at that time. And I definitely had the experience throughout of like, ooh, am I pissing people off? Is this like seeming off brand or off message? But I just really I just let myself lean back and surrender and trust. And I think that, the effect is I probably did polarize and piss off some people and have some people, tune out. And that's okay, because I think that there were probably also people who are like, oh, I see you as a more multifaceted person. Like I see what you care about. I feel like I'm getting to know you even more by getting to know what matters to you. And so I didn't do it for business, but I can see how in some ways it's, and I didn't do it to serve my business even in the long term, but I can see in a sort of roundabout way that I show myself to the world as a more whole and complete person, because they were things that I cared about, but now I'm just talking about them more.
Oh, I love that you started to recognize the parts of you that you're like, where is she? I miss her. And you're basically not compartmentalizing your life and who you are and what matters to you, but you're bringing your whole self to your work, to online, and not separating the pieces, which I think that is how we lead with love, is to bring our whole selves forward and not to like, oh, this goes over here in this pocket. And I think that's really beautiful. And coming back to that place of courage, right?
Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of pressure at times for people to talk about things like, you should be talking about this, you should be doing this a certain way. And I think that my deep belief is that we need to go deeper than that. We need to go beyond I'm doing this to perform. Like I'm doing this because this is what's expected of me, right? That's like the old good girl, do the right thing narrative. Like I'm doing this to please and appease versus, no, I'm doing this to be expressed in the things that really deeply matter to me and that I'm passionate about, and to, as you said so beautifully, not compartmentalize who I am.
And what would you say to people who, have those extra tender hearts, are more sensitive to the pieces that are going on in the world, and tend to like their response, instead of like take action, is actually to pause and shut down? Like I raise my hand to that I get so overwhelmed that I can't even process the words of what I'm feeling or thinking, but it's like, yeah, I believe that. And I don't have all of the words to communicate it or take a stand in a more public way.
Mm-hmm. Such a great question. First of all, I really love the work of a woman named Andrea Renee Johnson. And Andrea Renee has a course called Coaching as Activism that I've been in for quite a while now. And I also brought her in to speak with my mastermind this year. And one of the things that she said, and I'm going to paraphrase, but I think I'm getting it mostly right here, is that we need to first just acknowledge to ourselves where we are. Like what we're feeling and where we are, and just work with where we are right now. If where we are right now is I've been on the front lines and I'm so tired and my body is burnt out and I need to rest and take care of myself, then that's where you are. If you're on the place of I'm scared, or I'm confused, great, work with the confusion, work with the fear, like just work with where we are. And I think that it's not about inertia, but it's also not about forcing. Like, can we instead meet ourselves where we are and work with that? So if it's courage, that it's like, oh, wow, I don't feel a lot of courage, or, oh, I feel really afraid. Oh, can I work with that fear? Can I allow myself to feel this fear and work with this fear and develop my courage and my willingness over time? Or, oh, I'm getting really defensive. Oh, let me work with my defensiveness. Let me see if I can practice opening and listening. So, I think in so many ways we grow one step at a time. Not, everything doesn't have to be a giant leap. I think that often growth is slow and steady. And so that's one thing that's coming to me. And another piece that's coming to me is, that we get choice. We have agency and we have choice about how we are going to engage. And one of my favorite practices for any of us is to really feel a deep embodiment of our own sovereignty. And one of my favorite ways, like super shortcut to feeling sovereignty, is I drop roots down from the base of my spine, down from my feet into the earth. And I just like breathe. Imagine I can breathe nourishment up from the earth and exhale that through my body. And then I also place a crown on top of my head. So I imagine that I have a crown on top of my head and I'm rooted. So I feel myself connected up to the cosmos, to God, the divine, to love, however you want to relate to that, down to my crown, and then also these deep roots into the earth. And there's a feeling of safety, I think, that we can really derive from feeling that connection with the earth, and also a feeling of pride, of courage, of I am here. This is me. I am here. That doesn't have to be forced, but we're also not shrinking away, right? So we don't have to push ourselves out. We're also not tightening ourselves up. And I think from that place of sovereignty, which it's a practice, like to really feel that over time, but through a deeper embodiment of sovereignty and practicing really embodying that sovereignty, we're more able to start to be able to really discern where we want to be inside of a conversation. And sometimes it's like it's in the therapist's office, and that's where we want to be in the conversation. And sometimes it's like way out front, sharing our perspectives. And sometimes it's sharing other people's perspectives that we agree with, but just sharing their voices, like shining a spotlight on what they're saying. And there is no right or wrong in that. But I think a thing that we can all look at is like, am I trying to force myself out, or am I tightening myself in a little ball and shrinking back, or more in one direction or the other? And can I just invite myself to be here in this moment and just embrace where I am, and then just be honest about where am I in this conversation right now, and where do I want to be?
I love that. And I just did that, like breathing in and rooting and putting the crown on. And I just felt this joy and spaciousness and just like strength and length in my spine. So thank you for just sharing that simple embodiment practice. And I know you talked about, being pregnant during the 2016 election, your initiation into motherhood. What has that experience been like to become a mother after already having an established business and coaching practice and leading retreats around the world? I'm just so curious, the doubts and the fears that have come up along the way, as well as some of, the fun and the joy and excitement of motherhood after already having a business. Because I know you and I both work with clients who are mothers or thinking about becoming mothers. And for those who have not become mothers yet or choose not to, that they're almost hesitant or waiting for like the right amount of money or things to be streamlined and in place. And so just want to locate where you have been in this journey of motherhood.
I love this question. And as you were speaking, it just was reflecting on like how I've so much come to recognize that there is no perfect time to become a mother, it might be the perfect time in someone's life, but like I couldn't tell someone else what that is for them, And so I remember at one point being like, oh, it would be so much better if you had your kids before you started your business and then they were a little bigger. And then I was like, oh, maybe it's great to have like your business super established, before you. And maybe it's great to like be building your business and a child at the same time. And I just have come to realize like there is really no right way. I've seen people who have, been just in the beginning of starting their business and also pregnant at the same time, or just have a little one at home. And I can see the incredible challenges that come with that. And also like the incredible gifts, like you're limited on time. And so you're probably going to really focus in on what is essential. In the same way my business was more established, the great aspect of that was for me that I had a team. I had people who could keep things moving for me. And like, I'm sort of imagining like being in a pool with a beach ball. And I'm like, it's my beach ball. And I'm like, I'm out of the pool, guys. And they're like, we got this, like keeping it up in the air for me, still my beach ball, but I got to get out of the pool. And so that was wonderful. And what's been challenging for me and what I'm sort of still in transition around was I built a business that worked for me as a single person, and now I'm a mother. And so the model that I built really, really worked for me for so many years, and it worked beautifully. And then I got pregnant and my energy went from like, I have typically been a very high energy person to it was like a pendulum swing from one end all the way to the other. I remember at one point saying to Noah, my partner, I think I'm the tiredest person in the world because I just remember this time in my pregnancy where I would be awake for 90 minutes and then I would sleep for 90 minutes and then I'd be awake for 90 minutes and it was all day long until I slept, for 10 hours or whatever that night. And I was like, oh, how do I do this model like this? I kind of got through pregnancy and I was like, great, I'll just pick it back up again. And so for me, it's been a big learning of what is actually the model that is going to work for me, for my family, at this time in my life, and what does that look like for me? So it's been very humbling really to be in that like long-term deep exploration and to just be, weaving my way there one step at a time and just really being in the exploration. So it's been super humbling, and I've been so grateful to have a team that has been incredible. And I really have found that for me, motherhood has helped me. And I heard this from so many other people before, like so many other parents, but then to live it has been awesome and trippy and challenging in its own ways, that you just get so much more clear about how you want to be spending your time and energy. And so it's been really clarifying for me in everything from finances to, investments, to team, to offerings, it's been clarifying. And I think my biggest obstacle has been my own attachment to my ways of doing things historically, right? And having to really work with my own attachment to like, no, but that's what's always worked. And no, but I really like doing it that way. And
what would be an example of that?
Yeah. The first one that comes to mind is that in the first year of my child's life, I led 5 international. I don't think they were all international, but 5-week-long retreats.
Not in your home, like not in your hometown, like had
not
to get
my
on a
hometown.
plane.
Had to get on planes to the other side of the world once. Like, I mean, it was, I think, the most retreats I ever led in one year. And it happened to be the year that I had given birth. I mean, it was just, so that was interesting. And it was beautiful. I love leading retreats. And so had I not had a child, then that might be the trajectory that I stayed on. It's like these very, very long, many retreats. And now that is, I realize like that's not, I love it so much, but I love a lot. You know, I also love my child. I love my time at home. I love my body. And I want to nurture all that I love. And so to nurture all that I love, I have to be more honest with myself about what I really honestly have the bandwidth for. And that's been, you know, a real initiation for me, I'll say, because I think one of the things that I really appreciate about myself and about so many entrepreneurial people is that like can-do attitude, that like, it's okay, I got this. Like, oh, there's more to do, throw it at me. I'll take it. Like, I can figure it out. I can do it. And I love that attitude, but I think I sort of took that into like, I can do all the things. I can show up for all the things. I can be all the things. And I'm like, oh, I can't. Like, not if I'm going to nurture all the things that matter to me. So for me, I think it's been a real shift from accomplishment and achievement to nourishment. And what does nourishing really look like? What kind of work is nourishing? You know, for me, just on a soul level, but also, you know, supportive of my family financially and with my time and energetic output. So there's a lot, and that sinking into this question of what is most nourishing, I think it's bringing so much more depth to my work. And it's been hard to let go of the trapeze bars of achievement even more and just fly through the unknown of like, I don't know exactly how this is going to go, but like flying towards the trapeze bar of deep nourishment. The way that I see it now is like, oh, I'm on a trajectory to contribute in even deeper ways, because the basis of my inquiry about how I show up and contribute in the world is about what would be most nourishing, not what would give me the highest level of achievement.
Mm. And something that you do lead beautiful retreats. You know, I was at a retreat that you and Sarah Jenks had co-led, and that was actually my initiation into really going deeper with my girlfriends, my friends, of like, hey, I really like you. Do you like me? Let's like be friends for real. Like, you know, Michelle, our mutual friend, like that was after that retreat of really deepening our friendship and being more all in. And I will say, before I met you and Sarah, like I didn't have deep friendships with girlfriends. You know, it was like George was my ride or die, and that was it. So I'm really thankful for that. And I think that's something that you weave so beautifully, is creating these retreat experiences and also an opportunity for women to deepen their connection and sisterhood with each other. Mm. And so one question that I have is, what is one of your favorite rituals that you bring into your retreats that brings that level of joy, sisterhood, nourishment? Oh
man. So there are so many, and it's so fun now. I've led over 30 week-long retreats, which is just wild to think about. Like I've spent 2/3 of a year or so like on retreat in my life. So it's sort of like now they get, you know, I sort of weave the experience as we go, which is really special. But almost every retreat, we do a really deep eye contact. And it's really intuitive for me at this point. Like I'll have women line up in 2 rows facing each other, and I'll play music. I love playing DJ, devotional DJ. Devotional DJ is my thing. I bought the domain name, you know, got to have the URL for that, for everything. But I will have women, and I'll you know, play beautiful music, and then I'll narrate, and just to have people just be still with one another and look into each other's eyes without the pretense, without the stories that we have in our head of like, oh, she's so pretty. Oh, that person, oh, she doesn't have kids. She doesn't understand. Oh, that person's so successful. Oh, I'm not as successful as these people. They're not as successful as me. Like all the stuff that we can have in our heads when we are just sort of plunked together in a room just all falls away. And it's like one human with another human. And to just guide the experience very intuitively, to help them play with really seeing the other person and sort of rotating around the circle. It's something that I love so much. It's sometimes a little like a trust fall, those trust fall exercises where sometimes people are like, oh, we're going to do this now. Or I don't know if I really want to go there. But every time it's like we drop several levels deeper in our connection. And the thing that I hear every time is people saying like, I just feel so seen, and wow, I really see you, beyond like all the stuff that you've done or beyond the things that you think about yourself, good, bad, or otherwise. Like, I just see you, who you are at an essence level. And it's like, it creates like a new baseline, that isn't about all the things that we've accomplished or what our kind of like resume would say or our elevator pitch would say, but a new baseline of connection that is like, I see you on an essence level and I believe in you, because I can feel who you are. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, that kind of like rooting for someone in a deep way, like really rooting for someone, to me, that's everything. I mean, I think it's like, we know that we need nourishment, like clean water and good sleep and healthy food. And I think that we sometimes can very easily overlook that we need as humans the nourishment of connection and intimacy. And I think we're getting hip to that and understanding that we do need it. And often we create it, as you said, in our romantic partnerships or with our children. But to have that with our friends is so powerful. And with our colleagues even, to develop friendships out of working relationships can be so powerful. And I think, for anyone who is like really ambitious or entrepreneurial, unless you already happen to have friends who are like that, it can be really lonely. And not just from the like, I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how to do this thing. I wish I could call somebody who's done it before, but also like, I don't know, am I crazy for doing this? Like, I just quit my job, or I'm trying to do this thing that no one in my family has ever done. And just to have people who are not only doing it, but also like can look you in the eye and see you and get you and root for you in a really, really deep way. It's so powerful.
Yeah. And I highly recommend for anyone that's listening, if you want to an experience, going on a retreat with Nisha is amazing. And they can go to nishamoodley.com to hear about that, as well as you have Sisterhood Day, Global Sisterhood Day. Like you share so many beautiful ways for people to create that nourishment and connection in their lives. And they can go to sisterhoodday.com, right?
Yes, sisterhoodday.com. This is like such a amazing labor of love for me, but we've had women from over 75 countries around the world, hundreds and hundreds of circles all over the world. And it's a free annual event. So people can go to sisterhoodday.com and sign up and then start a circle, host a circle, and we give people all the tools. And, from the podcast release date, it'll be a little wait, several months. But, I really want to create this worldwide movement of people gathering in connection. And I'm a big fan of the work of Jean Shinoda Bolen. She wrote a book called The Millionth Circle. And one of the things that it's like the foundational premise of that book is that when we have 1 million circles gathered around the world, basically 1 million groups of people connecting, but from the heart, that this world will be a radically different place. And so, yes, sisterhoodday.com is where people can check that out.
And how do you, we're talking about nourishment. So I'm curious how you prepare and care for yourself before and after leading retreats and holding so much space and energy for people.
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know that anyone's asked me that before. I love it. Okay. So I think that first of all, the biggest thing that I think I do that supports me, one, having people support me, having somebody who is holding it down. I've worked with a woman named Lindsay May Wilson for years, helping hold space, like beautiful, powerful, deep, caring, logistical and emotional space on my retreats, and just having somebody who's like holding that for me and also for the community. So I'm not doing it alone. That's really powerful. And it means that if I need to go to my room and have lunch by myself, or, like go to my kid at the end of the day, and somebody is like feeling something or needing something, that there's someone to support them. Right. So that is really powerful. Just having the right support, having adequate support. I think the other thing that I was going to say, though, maybe there are two biggest things. That's one of them. And the other one is I trust myself, and I trust what I call the field. And when I say the field, I basically mean life. Like I trust myself and I trust life. I trust the space that we're stepping into together as a community to guide our experience and to guide me. And I trust the women. Like I trust the people gathering. I trust that there was something that brought us together that we may not know yet. We may not see or be able to define or explain yet, but there's something that brought us together, and I trust that, and I trust them. And I find that just in trusting them and trusting us as a group, as a collective, and trusting myself and trusting life, like the field, the greater, like whatever it was that brought us together and holds us together. I trust that. And that's a big thing to do. But because of that, I'm not holding a lot of tension in my body or in my mind. And I find a lot of times when people are holding space, they feel really drained and exhausted, or they get sick after. And it's often because they're holding a lot of tension throughout. They're scared, they're scared of something going wrong, or they want to get it really right. And that tension, I think, that we hold in our bodies, at the end, we finally go like, oh, okay, it's over. And then our bodies are like, blah, So that's one piece, is really practicing feeling trust in my body. And to me, that is literally scanning my body and seeing where I hold tension and exhaling. And so one of my favorite activities for that is just sitting on the floor with my back against the wall and inhaling. And as I inhale, I think to myself, I trust. And as I exhale, I say, relax. I inhale trust and I exhale relaxation. I just practice breathing that way while I'm in the space with people, really relaxing my body the whole time. And I also find that that's how the intuition gets through. So it has it's a multi-purpose. It's like one of those sprays that you can do the windows and the counters.
I love it.
Relaxation in the body. It's really powerful. And nourishing food for me and for everyone that I'm feeding. If I'm feeding them, I make sure that we eat really, really, really nourishing food, and I give myself really nourishing food. And then the last thing that I will say is I think it's really helpful for people who hold space, whether you are a parent or you are a facilitator, especially if you consider yourself to be like a more sensitive person or open, empathic, that we can take on a lot of people's energy. And so to learn how to discern and feel what is my energy and what is someone else's, and to learn how to not sponge in and hold on to everybody else's energy. So one of the things that I do is every time I leave the space, I literally imagine myself like I'm snapping my fingers to say like, it's that instantaneous. I imagine myself dropping everyone's energy off of my body and out of my body. So if if we're going on a break in the middle of session, or I'm going to the bathroom, I just, and I drop, and I just like, oh, I'm filled with me. And I also love to kind of lead the group through activities that can help us all connect with our own energy. It helps me and it helps them. It helps everyone. And so, for example, I'll lead us through a little guided meditation where we sort of imagine ourselves inside of a golden egg. And then we imagine all the energy that is not ours leaves the golden egg. And then all of the energy that is ours comes back in to our energy field. And then we just breathe in our own energy for a little while. So there are many different exercises, but that's just one of them. And I think learning, for whoever's listening, like really learning a practice that works for you to be in your own energy, to step back into your own energy, and to let go of, release, slough off, and even not be such a sponge, right, for other people's energy. Nothing wrong with it. I think we really think of sensitivity and empathy as a handicap. I think it's a total superpower to be that open. And it's just a superpower that we're not taught. Most of us aren't taught how to work with. So we have to learn. I think of like Elsa from Frozen. We need to learn how to work with our superpowers so that we don't experience them as handicaps, and so that we don't have to like shut down and shut out the world in order to feel okay.
Yeah. And this is truly what I believe that you embody, and you've even created a program around this, like the soul of leadership. It's this next level of leadership that we step into, that it's not this like strategy or tool or thing that, paint by number path to success. Like leadership has this own, its own essence of you stepping into more of who you are and owning that. And so I would love for you to just talk about the birth of Soul of Leadership and what that work looks like for people. Because when I listen to you, I'm like, bing, bing, bing. I'm like, I have so many ideas that I want to like Voxer after this conversation of just like the power of what you bring to people that are stepping into this level of leadership.
Thank you for that reflection. Yeah, so Soul of Leadership was born from, really a decade of me training in different healing modalities and also being a coach, both a health coach and also training as an executive coach, and learning for myself and also for my clients throughout that time how to support us in feeling like we can really show up into the visions that we're holding for ourselves and for our world in a powerful way, like really show up into them, and not only show up into the visions that we're holding for ourselves and our world, but even often expand those visions to be what they really are, like what our deepest heart's calling is. And what I saw as a challenge, as a stumbling block for so many of us, including myself, time and again, is that there's a picture, an idea of what we think leadership is or should be or what it looks like. And most of us don't fully see ourselves fitting into that. And so even though the cultural narrative is changing, right, and we're seeing like more people of color, more women, and more, people who express emotion. I'm thinking of like Barack Obama crying, right, on the world stage, right? And we're seeing different expressions of leadership, both like people's identities, but also how they're showing up. And even though we're seeing that, though, that doesn't change the fact that most of us have kind of internalized and been conditioned to, whether it's really conscious or just subconscious, like really deeply kind of embedded in the programming in our minds and in ourselves, that we have to be a certain way in order to be leaders, in order to see ourselves as leaders. And even if we strip away the word leaders, like in order to create the lives, the businesses, the organizations, the relationships that we want, right? We feel like we have to be something that maybe we're not. And so often I'll speak with women who are like, I'm just quiet, or I'm shy, I'm not that super bold, outspoken person, or I'm not so well educated, or, I'm not super feminine, I'm more like analytical or whatever. And I feel like I'm supposed to be more feminine, or I'm like too flowy. And I think I need to be like more organized and more structured. And so what I really came to realize through like a decade of working with folks is realizing that there are skills. We can learn how to, be excellent speakers. We can learn copywriting. We can learn sales and management and, how to be better writers. Like we can learn all of these skills. But what makes us world class, like exceptional in those skills is our embodiment. It's who we're being. It's what we bring to those skills. And that we can embody what I believe to be the most powerful and transformative qualities of leadership. And when we embody those qualities, then we can really truly become excellent world-class leaders. Whether that means that we want to run a badass PTA at our kids' school, which is amazing, or, we want to run for office, or we want to start a business, or we want to take our business to the next level, right? All of these things, for us to really show up into those, it's not just the skill, but it's about who we're being. And it's taking, in Soul of Leadership, we sort of take what has been I consider it the old crusty model of leadership and flip it on its head. So leadership isn't about the win-lose. It isn't about the hierarchical dynamic. It isn't about dominance, and being dominant. It isn't about, being aggressive. It is about being relational. It's about being inclusive. It's about, and by the way, I'm not saying we can't be angry, but it's about learning how to fuel that through our passion, right? So embodying these qualities that allow us to show up and be in our sovereignty, be in our integrity, be focused, be receptive and open and courageous and creative. And there's a way that we can really embody those qualities so that we have range. I don't just have to be sweet and nice. I also don't just have to be hard charging and aggressive. I can be bold and courageous. I can also be open and receptive, right? Mm-hmm. That those aren't opposites. They all can exist inside of me. And I think that sort of ability to be flexible and adaptable is what makes us genuinely powerful in the world. And I don't mean powerful like we have power over other people, but we are empowered within ourselves.
Spoken word poetry, snap, snap. So before we wrap up, I love this question that you ask. I know you've shared it with the people that you serve, but what is your why for you and your why for the world?
Mm-hmm. I love this question. It's one of my favorite questions. My why for the world is a vision for humanity where we really show up for one another and we really show up for this planet, and that we understand that harmony isn't just about being nice. Nothing wrong with nice, but it's not all about we agree and we get along. But harmony is about the willingness and ability to be with difference, to be with difference in identity, difference in expression, difference of opinion. And from that place of willing to be with that we're united, that we're actually together, even inside of our difference. And my vision, my why for the world, my vision for the world is that each of us gets to do work that we are uniquely passionate about and uniquely designed and suited for, and bring our unique contributions to the world. And that those unique contributions are a tapestry of transformation and growth and beauty for our planet, for our world. And my why for me is that I get to be part of that and, do that through my work with Sisterhood Day and Soul of Leadership and the other things that I'm offering. And also that I, get to live a life where I get to see my son grow and your daughter grow and all of our children grow and be healthy and thriving in a world that is healthy and thriving.
Oh, I love you so much. So I know we've covered a lot, and you're just a creator. You create so much magic and beauty and do it with such intention and care. And I'm just going to drop this here because if you're listening, you're a podcast listener, that Nisha, make sure to stay tuned because she will be releasing a podcast too.
It's true.
It's coming. It's coming. So is there anything we haven't covered that you would love to share in this moment?
I think we covered it, but it's like a piece that I always want to highlight and underline every time, which is, if you are craving, if you're a person that's craving more connection in your life, I just really invite all of us, and we may have a lot, I even crave more connection and I have lots of incredible friends, but I just think I want to fan the flames on that yearning for connection with other people so that we stick with it, so that we honor it and so that we stay with that desire and find the courage to really open up and share ourselves with others. Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you, Nisha.
Thank you, Jada. I love talking with you every time, and I love this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your heart and attention and listening to Lead with Love. You can always get the links and resources mentioned in each episode over at leadwithlovepodcast.com so that you can build a sustainable business and live a creative life on your terms. If this message, Leading with Love, resonates with you and you want to take a stand for remembering that there are humans with beating hearts behind the numbers, I would love for you to subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people spread more love in the world, which we really, really need. I also love hearing from you. So as you're listening, take a screenshot, share your favorite takeaway, and tag me on Instagram and Facebook at Jada Selner. I really appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.